Hello, welcome back to my channel, Rooted in Reality. My name is Shivani Upadhyaya, and today we're going to be covering the first reality-based disorder, and this is one that I actually have extensive experience with called DPDR, or depersonalization, derealization. Now, derealization is when you feel disconnected from your external environment, objects, sounds, you feel like you're in a video game. Depersonalization is when you feel disconnected from your body, like your thoughts, observations all aren't your own, but rather you're just a passenger in your own existence. I'm going to break this video up into two parts. The first part will be my experience and all of my symptoms, and then the second part will be tips and what I think work for you. This is part one of two of a DPDR series where I will be going through my side. Part two will be a continuation where I cover gaps in some of the research papers I've decided to take a look at, as well as some of the esoteric wisdom that I feel will help fill in those gaps. But just to recap, I've had about 24 years of abuse, suffering from sexual, physical, psychological, within the family, all the way till having friends that were a lot of bullies, a lot of racial trauma. On March 31st, 2022, I received a phone call that essentially changed my life. It was actually the most recent job that I was unemployed from. I'll never forget the first day the symptoms hit. Shards of my memories from pretty much when I was born. And even though I was looking at the city of Seattle, in my brain, everything was black. And these shards, they come up to form a mosaic of my entire life, and at once they shattered. I also saw a blue orb, and it was like moving and glowing. And I heard a voice, and it wasn't me thinking or speaking, but it was exactly my voice speaking back to me. It let out this blood curdling scream. Even though nobody was there to speak to me, I could just hear it, and it was making me damn near deaf. And she goes, "Shivani, we've lived this way our whole entire lives." And this orb just blows up and explodes. Immediately, my reaction is like, I'm just so sick, like I'm about to puke. And that's when the first symptoms came in, where I started looking at my hands and I was like, who am I? And then immediately I go to my boyfriend at the time and I'm asking crazy things like, did the plane just go by? And who are you? And like, I'm touching his face and I'm like, why is this happening to me? At first, I thought, maybe I'm just shocked that my life is actually about to change for the better for once. But no, this actually continued on every single day for 8 to 9 months. Then I couldn't even look into mirrors because I started feeling shocked. I was asking that person who she is, and it would make me panic so much that I would want to shatter these mirrors. Of course, I never did so, but I would feel my hair and just become so aware that I have hair. I've looked in the mirror every day before going to school to brush my teeth, and I've had to comb my hair. It really felt like I was just being born for the first time at age 24. Eventually got to a point where I couldn't make eye contact with people when I spoke to them, especially when I moved out here because everything was so brand new. It was almost as if looking at people was like looking at a lie. I was really frustrated. The same way you can look at me and see this background behind me, I didn't like that. I felt like people were hiding reality and consciousness from me, and it got pretty gnarly. Like, I kind of wanted to rip the skin off of their skulls, not because I wanted to harm anybody, but I was panicking because I felt trapped in my own body. Like, my soul in my body felt the way you would feel if you were wearing a mascot costume and watching life from the mascot's eyes. I would have visions of the universe where I would see galaxies, nebulae, the stars. I would see myself entering and exiting Earth in the solar system and watching myself from outside of myself. The lights turned off in my head. And this is when I realized pretty much my whole entire life I had some sort of background maladaptive daydreaming scenario running constantly. That turning off almost made me wonder if perhaps what I had running in the background was a reality I was trying to escape to. Because if I feel like I was just born and I just woke up for the first time at age 24, it would indicate that I'd been asleep pretty much my whole life, which was actually true. With all the suffering that I'd gone through, I had adopted a dissociative freeze response for 24 years. Now that there was a chance that I would be actually able to live a life of liberation and freedom away from trauma, have a job that can provide me the health care that I need, it all of a sudden made everything in the background come to the forefront. The only time I would feel peace was when I watched TV. And at the time, it was Vampire Diaries. And that's because it was something that you know is a fantasy tale. And so if I'm watching it, inside of this box, I'm like, okay, universally, we all know anything inside of this box, the TV, is not supposed to be real. So my internal expectations matched my external reality. The sleep paralysis demons also came more frequently to me. It got to the point where in the middle of the night at 3 a.m., I would exit my room and just scream in my apartment, get out, to things that weren't there. So I actually had a trigger warning, a timer on myself where I was like, if I can't live normally like everyone else, I might have to myself. And like I said, auditory and visual hallucinations are very normal during a DPDR experience, and they come and go at their own will. I'm not in control. One of the hallucinations that kept popping up was actually this. I call this at the time the circles of fate. Yes, I painted this. This first popped up when there was somebody in my life that I deeply trusted to not use my kryptonite against me, and they did. It was my anti suicide line. As a result, it broke my nervous system. When I set that timer on myself, it was these same circles that came back, and they actually could speak to me, which was really weird. Every time they came, I would just shiver and be terrified. Their message was even if you were to not be present anymore, you would be reborn again, and the same patterning would happen. You're stuck forever unless you break this. Nothing really even preps you for when people start looking at you like you're some stranger, some outcast, some freak. When you try to confide in them about what's going on, they'll tell you it's just thoughts. They'll tell you you need to go see a doctor. I did. The neurologist said I was fine. I actually went to the eye doctor 3 times because I was swearing that I was going blind because my hallucinations became far more real than what was in front of me because my experience of the hallucinations had a somatic reaction and my external reality would make me freeze. I had an experience where I was trying to reach out to a friend because they had had some mental health experience. I was like, why not try to ask for help when I'm spiraling because that's what you do, right? Several months later, this person texts me again saying that they ghosted me for several months on purpose because I was too much and I was too dark. Apparently, they felt guilty, which is why they felt the need to text me and tell me all of this stuff. When someone experiences guilt, they're more so trying to get rid of the feeling of guilt rather than help you and be there for you. There will be people that may run away. A lot of what you're experiencing is, as I will demonstrate more in part two, it's a form of awakening to some very deep philosophical truths. I guess if there was a silver lining, it was to see who's really there for you and who just wants to posture as someone that can be there for you during a mental health crisis. If you're experiencing anything like this, I want to hold your hand. So let's hold hands. Okay, very good. Now, if our external environment is a reflection or a projection of our internal reality, then if somebody is running away from us, experiencing a particular truth, could it also not be the case that perhaps we are running away from our truth as well? This isn't a victim blame. I actually think that we can reverse engineer this. Wanting to see only the light is exactly what keeps you in the dark, but one who can actually sit through the darkness is the closest to the true light. So, I'm going to give you 8 tips on what worked for me, and hopefully, they can help you out in some ways. A disclaimer that if it's something that's debilitating, I am not a medical professional, so seek help from a healthcare professional. Totally accept yourself in the situation. A lot of the suffering for DPDR will also come from wanting to resist what's happening. You feel like there's something wrong with the way you're thinking. You want to be normal just like everybody else. But the reality is, it's a lot of isolation in the way you're being and the way you're processing. And if it wasn't for being so isolated, you wouldn't think that there was something wrong with you. Taking videos of yourself when you're asymptomatic. While I share that I was having these symptoms every day for 8 to 9 months for several hours a day, there were pockets of time that I got really good at recognizing where I wasn't having them. And immediately I got my camera out and I was like, Shivani, look, it's possible for you to feel normal. Look at me. You can be me. It's okay. It's possible. I really held on to those videos for dear life. For the love of God, and I'm going to say this with so much love, do not look up your symptoms. As you will see in part two, there's not a lot of scientific research done on this. Most of what you're going to find is people's anecdotal experience, and it's very doomsday sounding, and you will get in the biggest spiral ever. My reaction the day I looked up my symptoms resulted in my symptoms amplifying like times four. By looking up symptoms, you are taking on someone else's experience as your own. And everyone's experience is different. And most of the time, when people are posting what's going on, it's when they're at the height of their desperation and really need help. Find a way to engage with community and touch. So when I moved out here, I joined the F45 gym. I have a gym in my apartment complex, but I also wanted to find a way to interact with people. And the cute thing about F45 is everybody kind of high fives at the end of a set or rotation. And then they try to do this thing where they have like all hands in and we'll do this little chant. And those things sound really corny a lot of the times. But when you're suffering this badly through something, that one high five when someone touches your hand, makes eye contact with you, and treats you like you're just fine, like everything's okay, and the whole room is treating you that way, it is so helpful. Stimulate your vagus nerve. You'll find what works for you as you experiment. It took me about 3 months to figure out the best way for me was actually through singing. Make sure the content of what you're singing is very grounding for your subconscious mind to register. Hack your symptoms of not feeling human by getting to the ego. It's very common to feel like an alien with these experiences. I just want you to remember if you're feeling fear, you are human. Yes, you are here with the rest of us, and we're here with you. If you were truly an alien, you wouldn't even be freaking out that this is happening. This would feel like a very normal occurrence. The ego is what ties us to feeling like we are in our human shells. Story time. I was at the edge of my bed right over here at night, spiraling and seeing phantoms outside of my balcony. The hallucinations were happening. And at the time, I was texting somebody that was a friend out here who was doing her residency for mental health. And I was telling her about the DPDR spiral, and her response was so terrible. It was, your therapist is not good if they're not giving you antipsychotics. If you don't take medication soon enough, you're going to cause irreversible damage to your brain. I got so mad. I was like, what the hell kind of response is this when someone is going through a spiral? Like, way to fuel the anxiety. Wait. I got angry. Why? I didn't want to believe that that was the truth. Immediately, I went from feeling like an alien that was experiencing phantoms and not in my body to all of a sudden, I zipped right back into my body. Unfortunately, negative reinforcement works better. So if you can think of something that angers you or embarrasses you or something that makes you focus more on your day to day activities or like a task right at hand that you have to deal with, that's more likely to snap you back into a sensation of feeling human. Connect with nature and animals. The beautiful thing about animals is that they're not thinking about being, they're just being. They're not out here paying 401k and taxes and posting on social media. They're just vibing, bro. And by being in their presence, they will really ground you. In your connection with nature, ideally you want to engage with your five senses. If you're smelling flowers, if you force yourself to break a sweat by going on a hike, if you're touching the fur of an animal while you're petting it, when you see vibrant colors in the sky and the grass, being out in nature is the best form of white noise, which is also very regulating for the nervous system. Define what real feels for you. For example, on this hike with my friend, at the time the symptoms weren't coming up, I was just telling him what was going on with me. I explained what felt real and what was going on and what I would believe and not believe. And a lot of the experiences I described were quite dark. So he goes, so all of that is real, but this isn't? And it just made me think, man, what is my idea of what real in life should be? Well, of course it had to be because of my trauma, but I never really took a second to think about the fact that it is so difficult for me to digest when things are going well. By defining what real means for you, you'll slowly find areas where you could be potentially projecting. Just let this be a seed planted in your mind and think about why certain things feel real to you. And if there's not some sort of association to potentially traumatic experiences, considering DPDR is connected to so many comorbidities, especially like PTSD and CPTSD. I believe you. I believe that you're experiencing more than just thoughts. I hope that these tips can somehow help you. That whole sensation of feeling trapped like a passenger in your body, there was the way we lived before this experience, right? Where we were in bondage and in acceptance of what was going on. And now you're in a state where you're in bondage and not accepting. Just going to leave a little hint there because ideally we don't want to be in bondage. So we'll talk more about this in part two. Your pain matters, and we're going to work through it by being rooted in reality. See you in part two.